Yes, we are live now. So I'm gonna, as of right now, only I will be able to be heard. For everyone else on the feed, waiting in the wings. Um, let's go ahead and share it over to all of our groups, and then as soon as it's shared, I'll go ahead and give our disclaimer, and we can get rolling here in a minute. Uh, I definitely hear you, Grace. I think we can. I will go ahead and say that live so he can hear me. Commissioner Butler, if there's something that you particularly do want time to go ahead and say, and and put out there, if there's anything like that, then please just let us know, and we will make sure we see the floor and make sure there's time for that. Okay. Hey everybody, if you are watching this right now, we are going to get started in just a few minutes. We're currently just sharing this video across a couple of different groups, but we will be getting going here just in a few minutes. All right, and before we get started here, I just have a couple of quick disclaimers for everybody. We will be getting started here in a minute, but in order to maximize the commissioner's time, I wanted to say these things before we get started so that it's not eating into our question time itself. This is an unemployment town hall that we are lucky enough to have, someone on the commissioner's level that is interested in transparency and making answers that people may be searching for available to the public. We wanted to try and make something like this happen. He's been on his personal Twitter feed, talking to actually to many members of our community. My friend Chelsea Brown, I know, reached out to him for an answer. And so we want to make sure that we had an opportunity to put this all together in one place. Joining us today is Georgia Commissioner of Labor, Mark Butler, also Grace Kim from Another Helping Consulting, Jessyca Holland, who is the Executive Director of C4 Atlanta, and Glenn Pieson, who is a member of IATSE Local 479 and has been doing some local organizing for many of his brothers and sisters. We want to make sure that we, again, acknowledge how important and wonderful it is that someone like the commissioner is making themselves publicly available like this. And I will be moderating. My name is Paul Glaze. You might know me if you have done anything with the Atlanta Artist Relief Fund. We've organized this town hall for you and for our community specifically because of a couple facts that you probably know from your own lived experience. That is that we are a diverse group of people from a very wide array of creative industries. That means film, theater, music, entertainment, arts, but also hospitality, service, food, and domestic industries in our survival jobs. Most of us are working in the metro Atlanta area, but there are people from all across the state in support of the group. And that this is certainly an issue that affects everybody. Um, Many of our employment activities that we depend on are stalled or on hold for the foreseeable future. We don't really know when an audience will feel that they are comfortable enough to go back into a theater or to go to a movie theater even or to go to large sporting events, concerts. What that looks like in the next year to two is an open question. Many of us do have traditional W-2 employment, but many of us are also independent contractors and W-9/1099 employees, or we're sole proprietors, business owners, gig workers. Most people do split and double dip. I think the current stat is that 40% of the workforce participates in the gig economy in some way. Um, and as artists, we typically laugh and call that the survival job, but the survival is important. Some of us rely on proceeds split from events. If you're a member of a musical group, often you go and the entire group gets one fee that then gets split, but sometimes that's not documented as well as it needs to be. And a fact that we know is that before this new legislation regarding unemployment passed, many of us would never have qualified for unemployment benefits through the state of Georgia. Um, so our community really just wants to understand what insurance benefits they can expect to receive. Please, if you have comments or questions, comment them on the video below. We can see them, or at least most of us can see them, and I can pull them up onto the screen. This video will be shareable. We will also, thanks to a wonderful volunteer through C4 Atlanta, be able to provide a transcript of this. So I will go back and add in closed captioning once we have that. I do want to go ahead and throw it over now to Glenn, who is an IATSE 479 member, who can give a little bit more context to the level of workload that DOL employees are fighting through right now. It really is remarkable, and that's why I want that framing and context to be out there, because while we do want to try and hit everybody's questions, time is limited, and if you are frustrated and you're not receiving, no one's picking up the phone, it's hard to pick up 40,000 phone calls at the same time, and those are things that we want to make sure that we recognize. Uh, so I'm going to throw it over to Glenn here for a second. If you have a question, again, please go ahead and put it in the chat, and we will try and hit as many as we can in the time we have allotted. Well, Glenn's mic wasn't working, so I had to jump back in on that one. While he's working on that, I will just say that the number that he told me, and the commissioner can confirm this or not, was that in mid-March they were processing some 350, 380,000 claimants, or towards the end of March, and that is radically more than that's years worth of time, trying to cram in just a couple of months, or a couple of weeks in many cases. Um, So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce Grace, and the commissioner. I will be here. I'll be on the back end watching comments. Thank you so much for watching, and remember that this will be available. So if you missed the first section, don't worry about it. We will make sure that you get a copy of the whole video.
Hello, Commissioner Butler. Hello, Commissioner Butler.
And I'm not sure
my name
if
is
I'm
Grace
supposed to
Kim,
be
and
speaking yet
I
or not.
am
I'm going to assume that I am.
independent
Um,
consultant
Actually, some
with
of those
Another
numbers you gave
Helping,
out
and
a little bit
I'm
old.
also
When it comes to phone calls, the reason why a lot of people cannot get through, it's not 20,000 phone calls. It's probably closer to 200,000 phone calls a day. And that's, people say, well, can you hire more people? Well, we currently are staffed at about 1,000 people around the state right now. Which is normal for a good economy. Had this been a normal type of recession, we would have had time to train people, bring them on board over a period of months, like what happened during the previous recession. And then you could have possibly been staffed up to what our old staffing level was, which was about 2,000 people, which is where we were during the recession of 08, 09. But even if we had those many employees right now, I really wouldn't put a dent on the call volume we're seeing right now, mainly because what we're seeing as far as claims volume, the old record for 1 year's worth of claims being filed at the Department of Labor here in Georgia was a little over 1 million claims, and that was back in 2009. We're probably most likely going to exceed that number for that year in just the 4 weeks. So when you combine the fact that you've got probably 250,000 people calling a day, plus those same individuals also need to be helping process these exact same claims that are coming in, along with some of the ones that we can do through automated processes through some of the technology we've got. It pretty much makes almost an impossible situation. It's very difficult on our employees. I can tell you that most of them are putting in 12 to 14-hour days. My days typically last from 7 a.m. to 11 at night. Myself, and that's not 5 days a week, that's 7 days a week. So, the workload is beyond belief. And then those are just the normal claims that we're receiving right now to people who are on regular UI. And during the midst of all this, we've also been asked by Congress to create a brand new program to pay out benefits for individuals who normally would not qualify for benefits. And that's the PUA that you're hearing about, that a lot of you are going to be qualified for. And along with the fact that Congress passed that, they also, typically what happens when they pass something like that, they pass the buck over to the U.S. Department of Labor. The U.S. Department of Labor has to put together rules and regulations of how that's going to be administered, what type of information needs to be gathered. And once they do all that, which it took them a little over a week to do that, they provide that to us. And it's only until that point, once they give that information to us, that we can actually start working on a process in which to make all that happen. Now, what has complicated this particular issue even more is that even after they gave us the initial rules and regulations, they have continued to come back and make additional changes, even as late as last Friday and and then yesterday also. However, we have pretty much told them that we just can't take any more changes, because if we receive any more changes, we're not going to be able to get this thing done like we want to have it done. And it's going to, we should have everything set to go to start receiving the additional information for PUA starting tomorrow. There should be emails going out which will ask those individuals to fill out additional information. And even in that process, we have streamlined a lot of the things that we were told to do. We're trying to make it easier to be able to process those claims faster than what a normal individual claim would be done. We're hoping all this kind of goes off without a hitch, but please keep in mind, we honestly had to create a brand new process totally from scratch. This is something that normally would have taken, I would venture to say 6 to 8 months at a minimum. And that's with testing. We're doing this in about a week and a half with very minimal testing. So, I'm hoping there's no glitches. And I know my IT folks have been working day and night to pull this off. But it is a very difficult situation. Because not only do we have to gather your financial information and also get permission from you to check financial information, but we've also got to catalog that, keep all that on file, because U.S. Department of Labor is their money, it's federal money, and so they're going to want an accounting of this when it's over, and that's the reason for all their different rules. So not only do we have to have a brand new intake process that never existed before to gather all that, but then we've also had to have a brand new payment process that has to go out, because a part of this is a lot of people. There's a lot of information out there saying it's just the $600. Actually, what they're wanting us to do is to take your financial information and then determine, based on our state laws, determine a claim amount for you, which could be anywhere from $149 a week to $365. And then based on what you're going to tell us your income is, that amount will be determined. And then that will be part of your weekly benefit plus the $600. So the benefit is going to be more than just the $600, but they're wanting us to compute or to take all that data that you're giving us and come up with a benefit amount. That's a lot of figuring and taking in that's got to be put through. And it's even harder for this type of situation due to the fact that we have none of your information. We're not the IRS. We don't have your tax returns. We don't have your 1099s. And for those of you who don't go that route, we don't have any of that information. So part of the system we've built is a way for us to gather that information. And those of you who do 1099s and who have already done your tax returns, that's going to be the easiest of all for us to be able to verify, because part of the process is you're going to give us permission to ping Department of Revenue, and we're having a link that we've got established with them, so we can basically take your Social Security number, hit their system. It tells us, yes, here's what this is. And then we know. But the other information, a lot of it's basically going to be kind of on the honor system, to be quite honest. How a lot of states are doing it is they actually want you to provide the proof up front, and then they'll provide your payment. We're going to allow you to actually state your income. And then if we have no proof of that income, that we can find either through revenue or somewhere else, then you'll receive a notification from us, and you'll need to provide us proof within 21 days. So there will be a time that if you don't have verifiable income, you will need to be able to provide proof for that. Okay. Again, we're trying to make this as easy and as flexible and as quick as possible, because we do know you've been waiting, and we have been trying very hard to get this done as quickly as possible. In a little bit of a commentary for me, uh, if Congress would have actually asked the states about this, we would have told them not to go this route. We would have said, you need to find a different delivery system, because what you're asking us is very difficult, and all the states are having trouble. I know for a fact that for my daughter, she lives in New York, and she's in the exact same boat as a lot of you people, because she's she didn't qualify for regular unemployment in the state of New York because she hasn't been working there long enough. And so she's going to be applying for PUA, which they just started their process this past weekend, and she hasn't got anything back on hers either. So we're not exactly sure what New York is doing, but all the states are struggling with coming up for an intake system, a catalog system to provide the proof to the U.S. Department of Labor to have an accounting at the end of this to show that we didn't just throw money out the window, because there's typically some pretty steep penalties for that. Of course, if I have to go and testify before Congress before this is all over with and tell them that they need to be relaxed about this, then that's what I'm going to do, because um, they put us in an impossible situation, and they have not been very cooperative, quite frankly, about being relaxed about this and understanding that we can't keep getting more and more rules and regulations and keep making changes, because if we kept doing everything like they're saying us to do it all the time, this thing wouldn't be ready till June. I'm not getting any sound from the question.
Yeah, Grace was having some problems there, so I'm actually going to throw it over to Jessyca Holland, who is the executive director of C4 Atlanta. As she said earlier, they support artists and they do professional development for about 2,000 artists around the Metro Atlanta area. So she's going to be coming in here in about 3 seconds.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Butler, for being here with us today. I really appreciate your time. And I don't want to spend too much time reiterating what you just said, but for those of us joining us, one thing I just wanted to clarify, if we could, is that your department, in addition to handling the state unemployment, you're also mandated the Public Unemployment Assistance Program, correct? Are you able to hear me?
Doesn't sound like he is able to hear you over there right now. Commissioner Butler, are you able to hear this question right now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect.
I can hear you perfectly.
Well, we'll have to work on that on our technical end here. The question is, just for clarification, in addition to the regular state of Georgia unemployment benefits that your department has to handle anyways, is it true, or are we correct in understanding that you have been tasked with the PUA administering of those benefits as well?
Yes, any of the unemployment programs that you saw that were passed in the CARES Act, it's basically handed off to us to be able to administer, which is kind of normal. I mean, Congress dreams stuff up, and then they send it down to the states to figure out how to actually do it. And quite frankly, they never ever call us and get input beforehand. It's pretty much it's kind of you guys figure it out. So. Which we've gotten pretty adept at doing that. The problem with this is because of the urgency of the situation, the additional pressures put on to pull something off of this magnitude, in which this is a huge and heavy lift, and I can't say that enough. I wish there was a way I could actually kind of diagram it out and show you what all is being built and created from nothing. Using staff personnel that we currently have. I mean, we've even talked to some very large corporations who do UI systems, And they were saying from the very beginning that if they built it, it was going to take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. We're probably going to be able to beat most of those, private companies as far as being able to pull that off. So it's not easy, even if you've got an army of experts.
That makes complete sense. So a couple of things we just wanted to run through real fast to make sure that our understanding is correct. All services right now with the DOL, for the most part, are conducted online and remotely,
Yes.
not at the service centers themselves.
Yes, and we had to do that for several reasons. First of all, for safety reasons. If you'll take a look at some of the things that happen in some other states that didn't do that or do not have robust online ways of filing. Take Florida, for example, where you were seeing hundreds of people standing in line outside of their career centers. That puts a lot of people at risk because of the social distancing issues that you're having right now. But it also puts staff at risk too. And the reason why that's even a bigger deal is because, right now, at our current staffing levels, we need every single person that has the ability to process claims to be able to do that. We've already had 2 instances since this started where we actually had to send home staff personnel from different career centers because somebody tested positive. And so you're taking
Okay.
people off the line that would normally be processing claims because and of course now we've made availability of computers for them to send home so they can do stuff from home. But we really were not prepared to have to send a whole lot of people home with a lot of equipment that they were going to need and that quick time space. Matter of fact, I think it was in the first week when this started, way back in March. We actually put in an order for about 650 laptops and associated equipment like headphones and things like that, to where we could actually pipe the telephone lines to them at their houses. To date, we've only received about 45 of those computers because every state
Mm.
started doing the exact same thing. And apparently, we got bumped by maybe some bigger customers from somewhere.
It seems like that is always the case on some level. This is a little bit of a recent development. How do you anticipate the governor's decision to reopen certain businesses starting next week is going to impact people's unemployment claims? And specifically, and I'm asking from a user who just commented, is there any, I don't know a better way to frame this or example to say this, but is there any ability for a quote unquote like conscientious objector, or those have to be decided on an individual basis? If your business opens up, but maybe you've got a multi-generational household and you don't want to go out because you've got an 80-year-old parent with you.
If you're talking about a regular W-2 claim that's in regular unemployment and your employer is filed for you, they do have the option to ask you to come back and they can
Mm-hmm.
stop doing unemployment. However, I would reach out to your employer, tell them your situation, and also keep in mind that there is actually a way, especially for businesses that are going to have a kind of a slow startup, and maybe somebody's hours are not going to be what they used to be, and the income is not going to be what it used to be. There are provisions right now that we put in place during this emergency where you can actually go back to work and make some money and also collect unemployment at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And under the old rules, you were only allowed to make $50 a week before it started subtracting dollar for dollar from your weekly benefit. And that's your normal weekly benefit, not the additional 600. We actually increased that number to $300. So let's say if you get called back, there is a scenario in which you could make, and we're going to keep it simple for math wise, but you could make $300 from your employer, keep 100% of your regular weekly benefit and the $600.
Okay.
So if you were in a situation where you were getting 300 in benefit, you could be making 300, keeping 300, and then getting 600. And so that's you're at $1,200 a week right there. And if you do happen to make over the 300, what it does is it just starts subtracting for every dollar over the 300 that we're allowing. It just subtracts a dollar per dollar off of whatever your weekly benefit amount is, and you need to collect at least $1 of that amount in order to qualify for the 600. So I
Okay.
mean, there's a lot of ways that you can actually, if you're, and I would talk to your employer, say, hey, look, there's a way you guys can keep filing for us. You can slowly get us in here and help us out, and we can make, make more money right now and take advantage of some of this.
Is there a packaged already way for that process for them, for employers, that we could provide them with information if they are unwilling to go seek it out themselves?
It's already a part of the process, a part of the partial claims process, and the reason, to make it easier on everyone for the employer to do this is, when the employer uploads your information, there's a space in there to where if you do come back part-time, they load up your gross weekly wages in there, and then we do all the math on the back end. Just as long as you don't exceed the 300 plus whatever your weekly benefit is, you would also receive whatever the difference is plus the 600. So we do all that. They just need to keep doing the partial claims and then just put in your gross wages. I mean, if you exceed that, let's say that you got the maximum 365 from us, okay?
Mhm.
Theoretically, you could in total make during a week $664. All right, and that leaves you $1 from us, from the state, because all right, and then you would also get the 600. And
That
so,
makes sense.
but now if you make 700 that week, then all you would get is the 700 in wages. You wouldn't get any of the rest.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, perfect. I'm actually, I know that Glenn's mic is working now. I'm going to throw it over to him for a question about dual W-2 1099 workers, which is a lot of people. Um, Let me pull him up here.
Hey, Commissioner Butler, is my mic working? Can you hear me now? No, still having audio difficulties.
I guess we are still having those. That is sad. So the question is, a big number of members of our community have W-2 and 1099 income, and they're dealing with a situation where they filed a claim on their own, and then the employer filed a claim on their behalf. And the employer typically filed on a date earlier than when they actually stopped working fully as individuals. So therefore, you have these people that get stuck in a place where they've got payments for a couple of weeks, and they're still working, but the payments stop early from when they actually themselves filed. If you get in a situation like that where you filed a claim on your own 1099 behalf, but your employer has also filed a claim, um, on the W-2 side, what's the best way forward?
Well, you can't have a claim for both. You cannot
Okay.
collect PUA and regular state unemployment. It's just not allowed, because part of one of the rules that exist currently for PUA is you cannot qualify for any state unemployment. Okay, even if it's only the minimum amount. I mean, if you qualify for some state unemployment, it automatically disqualifies you from PUA. So that is a situation that should not exist between those two. But what he's asking is, if they try to do an individual claim first, and we've had some issues with some employers, even though we sent out multiple emails, even at the very, very beginning of this, saying, if you're going to be laying people off, you need to file for them so it'll be a faster process. And then, and if you don't, there's some penalties. Well, a lot of people just ignored it. And then after a couple of weeks went by, then somebody finally said, well, you're going to get penalized if you don't do this. And then they all ran out and, started to try to do it.
Mhm.
Which has been a problem for us. But however, we've got some fixes that we have tried to go in there to take out those duplicate claims. I think the other day we were showing about 35,000 duplicate claims currently right now around the state. And so our programmers have created some script to take some of that out. However, I would ask, especially if he's got some union members, and we've done this for other unions, if there's a way that if you've got some folks who payments started and then got froze after the employer did that on top of what they tried to do, to run those requests or get those people's information and run it through just one email. And it can direct it to us, and then we can go back through that and see the reason why they got hung up. We've also noticed that there are some instances where people's payment have stopped because maybe they've gone back and got some part-time work, or they got a new hire stop. Maybe they picked up a part-time job. That'll also can cause a stop until we see some type of verification of income or lack of income. So there's a lot of things that can actually make a payment stop.
Mhm.
But if you're in a situation where you have not worked at all, and it's just the fact that your employer came way after you, there's a way that we can get that restarted.
Okay, perfect. That makes sense. I have another question here from the community. This one is, I'll frame it as a scenario. So say you do meet the income threshold, but your income is undocumented or underdocumented. Um, for if you do gig work with Instacart or Lyft, then that you might have that record. But if you're a musician or a performer, a lot of those are paid either under the table or they're given just kind of a lump sum. What is appropriate documentation for establishing that you've met the threshold for people in those kind of underdocumented areas? Is there a way to retroactively document that if you can get it notarized, or what are the options there, at least in terms of PUA?
Well, I mean, there's going to be a lot of ways you can actually prove. I mean, it's going to be the different type of pay stubs and things like that, or however. But if you're talking cash payments under the table, that's going to be extremely hard to document, especially if it's never hit
Mhm.
a checking account of any kind. But I mean, at some point, you would have to be able to provide some type of proof. And so it'd be very hard for me to answer the question about if you got paid under the table, as in,
Mhm.
cash payments, because then that's probably non-reported income also. Uh, but now
Is
we're not gonna. But now we're not gonna be sending. If you do, come up with a way of showing some bank deposits or things like that, or some proof that you did have income, we're not going to be sending that over to the IRS or anything like that. So it's just going to be for our system only.
if you were, say, a theater owner that had done that with a couple people and you were just trying to make sure they were covered, then as long as that was reported on taxes and there was some documentation there, then you're probably going to be okay.
Well, yeah, if you've been paying taxes, of course. Now I'm going to tell you that USDOL was insistent that they're only going to accept 2019 information and this year's. All right, so if you filed in 2018, that's not going to help you. Matter of fact, when all this first started, that was the only thing that they were going to accept was a tax return, and we had to remind them that, well, you guys, the federal government put off when you can do your taxes, so there's a lot of people
Mhm.
have done that, and now people can't get their tax returns done, so you guys got to find some flexibility, and it was kind of an aha moment for them, and then they started getting a lot more flexible, but with other ways. But I mean, you'll just need to document. Okay, I mean, it's not going to
Mhm.
be. There's been some things put out there on social media that that we're going to do everything that we can to keep you from getting this benefit. If anything, we're doing everything we can to make sure you can get some benefit. Bending over backwards to so just make sure that you've got some legitimate ways to back that income up that can be verified. Okay, you do not want to get in a situation to where you're fabricating something that cannot
Right.
be proven, cannot be backed up, because you could get into a lot of trouble, because depending on how much money you're talking about here, I mean, and it is federal money, remember this, please. This is not state money. This is federal money, and so it
Right.
won't be Georgia authorities coming after you. It will be federal authorities if you were to. And I'm not saying anybody's going to do that, but in case somebody's thinking about doing that, be very careful. Make sure that you can lock it down and you can verify it.
Perfect. We're gonna try one more time with Grace here, but first I wanted to say on behalf of Glenn, since his mic isn't working, that he just wanted to very personally thank you for helping out, especially with his union with IATSE Local 479. They got into a couple different sticking points, and your willingness to do things like this has meant a huge deal to members of that community, which is a huge part of Atlanta here. Um, I'm going to go ahead and throw in Grace now and see if we can get her audio going. Go ahead, Grace. Let's see if we can hear you.
Okay. Can y'all hear me and see me? Okay, can y'all hear me?
No,
No.
apparently
Darn it.
not. Well, I apologize about that, but we can keep going because we wrote our questions out ahead of time. So second scenario we have is, say you filed for unemployment prior to April 13th, and now you're concerned that you might not receive your full benefits. We know that if you've already filed for state unemployment, that you don't need to refile. We know that there's an FAQ on the GDOL website that says if you establish a claim and the unemployment rate goes up at a later date, then you will not, the basis of your determination will not be revisited You will not be recalculated based on new information. If a new CARES Act comes out or a new stimulus package, something comes out that does change that, which I don't necessarily expect, and for your sake, I hope they don't. But if that does happen, is there any kind of appeals process or, any process like that for people to, send it back up?
Yes, I mean, we do have an appeals process right now, and I can tell you that appeals process is extremely backed up also.
Right.
As you can imagine, I mean, you've got 1 million people claiming unemployment right now. And we've, believe it or not, we've processed close to 800,000 of those claims
Wow.
in 4 weeks. That's never been done before, and and a lot of the credit goes to our IT department, who have come up with some fantastic ways just on the flies to do some auto processing to be able to, without a human actually having to touch some of this stuff, to pick up some of the things that we can kind of go ahead and move things along. Our biggest issue is the volume is what we're running into right now is actually caused a lot of problems. Like the other week, we had an issue where of course, we'd never tried to do this before, so we didn't know we couldn't. But I think we tried to put in, it was an enormous amount of money on the 13th that we were trying to transfer, and also a whole bunch of payments. We're doing state and federal for the first time. And so we tried to send those out on the 13th, and the federal went through, but the state stuff actually started bouncing back because there wasn't enough bandwidth. And so we had to break those out throughout the week. But we worked with our vendor and also our IT staff, and we actually got that bandwidth increased. We didn't know we were going to have to do it because we'd never done it before.
Right.
And we actually sent out payments. I think it was last night and today that were even bigger than that, and they did go through. So we know that our fix worked on that. I did see one of the questions you had on here where, excuse me, I'm talking so much on the phone, so I'm losing my voice. Where there's some W-2 employees that are they're getting payments, but they're also still working. Okay, keep in mind, as long I mean, they can make up to $300 a week, and as long as that's being reported, whatever benefit they're getting, they're going to be fine. But you just got to make sure that the income is being reported. If there's a situation to where somebody has not been reporting the income, then that's something we're going to have to go back and take a visit. But you can make up to $300 a week, and anything above the $300, you start subtracting dollar for dollar from whatever you got from us. Now, if it exceeds the full amount, then yeah, there will be an overpayment issue at some point. But we're going to try to do our best to work with everybody on this right here. But make sure your employer or you're putting in the gross, not net, gross wages on a weekly basis. And so if you get paid every 2 weeks, just take it, divide it by half, and put it in there.
Perfect. So I know we only have a couple of minutes left, so I want to hit a couple quick points that are been anxiety points in the community recently. For those of us still, this is from a Facebook user. For those of us who are still unemployed while the state is open, will the weekly searches still be required? What is the anticipated length of those waived requirements still being waived?
Okay, and here's where it gets a little confusing, and I don't know how we're going to be able to clear this up, except that on your state benefits, as long as we are currently under the state of emergency, even though we're starting to open things back up, I mean, until the governor says we're no longer under a state of emergency, then the emergency rules are still in effect, which means, you don't have to do work search right now. But here's the big but. The U.S. Department of Labor, they want you to do work search for the federal benefits. And so, but we've told them, well, that's contrary to what we're doing here at the state level. And all the states have told them this, by the way. It's not just Georgia, because we've been on these calls with them, and we're like, come on, guys, you've got to work with us. You're causing more confusion than you're actually helping. And so, we are going to be flexible on how that's looked at.
So another quick question. There's been some, and we hear you on that. So we'll do our best to maintain that, that separation between federal and state.
They're counting on us to check on that. And like I said, we're going to be very flexible on that.
Got it. So recently, with the governor's announcement, there has been some community anxiety or speculation, especially with what happened with the Paycheck Protection Program and the small business loans. that there have been some anxiety or questions around the solvency of Georgia unemployment benefits given the increase. So I just wanted to go ahead and give that opportunity for you to dispel those or not as you see fit.
We're good. We got this.
Okay.
We actually, when I first became labor commissioner, we during the recession, we did not have a very healthy going into it. We did not have a healthy trust fund, and so how this works is the money that we collect from employers on the taxes to pay this. It actually goes into a lockbox, a true lockbox, not like the Social Security thing you hear about. It actually goes into an account that you cannot touch. Okay, it can
Okay.
only be used for unemployment. Um, so we went from owing almost $1 billion, about 10, 11 years ago, to about a month or so ago, we had right about $2.6 billion in that account. Okay.
Mhm.
I don't have today's numbers, but as of yesterday, over the last month, we've paid out on the state side a little over $300 million, which is
Okay.
roughly twice of what we paid out all of last year. So yes, it has put a little dent in the state, but I mean, we've still got, a very healthy trust fund account, and we do have provisions in there where we can borrow money from the U.S. Treasury if need be, and it doesn't really have a cap on it.
Okay.
The state does have to pay interest on any kind of loans if we have to do that. But let's hope we don't get to that point to where we,
Right.
you're talking in a situation even worse than what we're in to pay out $2.6 billion worth of unemployment benefits. I'm not saying we're not going to get there, but I hope we don't get there.
Right.
When you take and compare what we're paying out in state benefits to the federal, I mean, the federal that we're sending out is so far is a little over 400 million because those payments are higher, and there hasn't been as many of those either. So, but that number is going to probably end up being double here soon
Okay.
of what we paid out in state.
I want to hit these last two real fast because we're in the last minute of your time, and I want to respect it. Thank you so much for being here. The first one we've gotten this a lot is, what if you qualify for state unemployment, but you qualify for $0? Is that another way of saying you're not
We didn't
actually
qualify.
qualified? Okay,
Yeah,
so you will be eligible for PUA, but not for state benefits.
but now there is a scenario where um, your your income may have gotten, we've had issues in the past where people's income was not reported correctly by their employer. I just helped a young
Okay.
lady the other day, and she was showing $0 on hers. And of course, her thing was, because, look, because I've been working here the exact same time my boyfriend is, and I work more than he does, and he's got it, and I'm not. So what is that? How am I not getting it? And so when we looked in her account, we first thought maybe that her employer was not reporting her on the partial claims stuff, but they had been. But what had happened was they had transposed her Social Security number for the wages that they had been reporting for her in their tax and wage reports. Tax and wage report is the thing they send in every quarter. It shows all the employees with the wages were paid and the tax payment from the employer. And that actually is what happened on her, is that in our system, it showed that they had never paid her any money at all because they didn't have her reported on the right Social Security number. So we had
That
to go
makes
back in
sense.
and fix that. And so, I mean, you're going to find issues like that. And right now we're finding a record number of those because, you're seeing 1 million claims filed. And we're also seeing issues where, people's IDs are not matching up with their names, or birth dates are being put in wrong. And that can cause some stops because all this stuff has to be also, a lot of people know this, there's a lot goes into processing a claim. We have to bounce your information off of Social Security Administration. And when it does that, if there's something that doesn't line up, say for example, your employer put in like we actually had one employer that filed a bunch of partial claims, and because their files were incomplete for their employees, they just made up birthdays for everybody on
No.
the file. And so every one of their
Mhm.
employees' partial claim actually bounced back because it looked like there were 60 fraudulent claims filed with made up information, which is how the system looks at it. So we had to go back in there, work with the employee, got to get the birthdays in right. So that kind of thing can happen too.
Last question for you, very similar to one we already had, and I'm sure the answer is also quick. Do you have any reason to believe that the PUA is not adequately funded, given the number of 1099 workers and everyone that's about to start claiming their $600 a week?
It's a separate amount of money, but I mean, we have not been given any kind of indication that it's not.
Okay.
I know that within about 2 weeks, or less than 2 weeks after the bill was passed, they deposited roughly about $1 billion in a special account that we had to open to handle just the federal claims, and so and they did not say this is all you're getting. That was just an initial deposit. We've never had an issue on unemployment not being funded from the U.S. Department of Labor. Because they typically, it's a different funding stream from the loans. I think the loans were set up at a specific amount of money that was set aside, but we haven't, we're not hearing anything from U.S. Department of Labor that they've got a cap on this and that we're about to run out of money. That has not come up.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I did want to cover one that I think Glenn has put on here, and he said it a few times, and I want to make sure we got him covered. But it goes back to the ones that's saying that some of the W-2 didn't know that another employer was going to file for them. You can tell the person, depending on what the person makes. If you're one of these individuals, you can report to that employer who's filing for you what your wages are, and they can put it in their spreadsheet. That employer was actually supposed to notify you. It's in all the information that was sent to them that they're filing on your behalf, but that we have seen a lot of people not doing that. But they were supposed to notify you they're filing on your behalf, and they were also supposed to notify you if you get any other type of job and make any kind of money, you need to report that income back. So they can put it in the spreadsheet. They can also ask that employer to quit doing partial claims, and they can take them out of the spreadsheet if they're making an excess of money that would disqualify them anyway. So Glenn, that's what I would tell them to do.
What does the average worker need to do to protect themselves to make sure their employer is filing correctly if it's an employer filing on their behalf?
Yeah, no, we've had some issues where we've had to make some phone calls where, like, we've had a few employers say, well, I filed the first time and I'm not doing it anymore. Well, I'm sorry, and I'm just going to put this out there. That's a jerk move right there. And it's also breaking the rules, and they will still get penalized if they do that. So we've asked people to notify us the best you can. I know it's hard to get through. I really do. And I wish that I wish we could add 10,000 people to answer the phone, but that's just impossible. But notify us that they're not doing that, and we will reach out. Especially if you can get either to me or to somebody else, the name of the employer and who's supposed to be filing it. We will reach out to them and explain it to them what they're supposed to be doing. And most of the time, 98% of the time, when we give them a call and explain to them that they're going to be penalized if they don't do it the proper way, you can't just file it one time and walk off on people. Because, and I'd also say to you, if you've got an employer that's doing that to you, get in touch with us when this is over, and let's find you some place else to work.
Yeah, agreed. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Butler. That's all the time I know we have for you, but we really appreciate it. We really appreciate you being out there and answering people's questions individually, sometimes until late into the night on Twitter. I know there are other questions, but Glenn and Jessyca and Grace are going to stick around. We'll try and answer all the ones that we know as best we can. And again, thank you so much.
Well, just let you know that our folks are working hard every day, and we're doing the best we can. But we're all gonna get through this. We work together, and thank you for your patience.
Absolutely, thank you. I'm gonna add our other panelists back in now. Let me make sure that y'all are ready to go there. Hey, Jessyca, can you say something for me real fast?
Hey, it's good to be here.
Oh, there we are. Must have been something with that iPad that he was using, because
I think so.
I could hear you all, and I think everyone else could. I'm going to add Grace in now. Real fast. Hey, Grace, will you mute your laptop again? I can hear you all. I'm going to leave Grace muted for a moment until that laptop is muted, so we don't hit the rerun there. And let me go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and pull myself off of this screen so I can go back
Okay.
and start looking for more comments. But thank you so much for being here, everyone. And everyone else, if you have not met these wonderful people, they've been doing a lot of stuff like this all the time, just in their spare time because they care.
Well, we got nothing but time right now.
But so much for being here, everyone. People, they've been doing a lot of stuff like this all the time.
Grace, I think your audio is still on a delay because I'm hearing what Paul just said played back in.
Oh, I just turned off the computer.
Okay.
Muted it. So
Okay.
is that better? Can you hear
Yeah.
me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. What an awesome commissioner we have.
He's a really good guy, guys. Like, he cares. This man, I'm not exaggerating, was tweeting at me, emailing me at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's incredibly
He's not
refreshing.
exaggerating. When he gets up at 7, he does not go to sleep. I've been
Yeah.
monitoring his Twitter feed. He's DMing people on there. This is the guy running the whole show, overseeing this entire thing, all of his employees, all this, and at the same time, he's doing Q&As.
Yeah.
It's really, it is incredible. I mean, the quality of human that he is obviously great, as well as
Amazing.
he hit on. He obviously was keeping on the forefront of people's mind, the kinds of concerns and issues that they have.
Mhm.
So that was also really refreshing to both get a lot of great information, both about the behind the scenes situation, with what's going on with the federal and state interaction, as well as the processes and stuff. I feel like he did answer many of our questions. Do y'all feel the same way?
Yeah, I thought, we've only been really trying to pull this together for what, like a week now?
Can you actually hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Am I being heard?
Man. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Jessica, I can't hear you.
You can't hear me.
Jessyca, I can hear you fine. I can hear both you and Grace.
Okay.
Paul, if you have a suggestion here, please let us know. Oh, man, Jessica, I want to hear you.
I'm there. So actually, I guess I'll just have to make sure that we can repeat Jessyca and Grace back to each other, and we'll have to do answers like that. To be for the sake of of keeping on topic, I want to hit a couple of things that he did say that we did ask for, and so we can clarify it. That might be a little up in the air. So the first is, what if you qualify for state unemployment but you qualify for zero? And the answer to that is you did not qualify for state unemployment.
Right.
That's some faulty wording on their side, or maybe you qualify but you're not getting anything. So the end result is still the same. If you have applied for unemployment, they will automatically consider you over for the $600 a week PUA. So you don't have to reapply. You don't have to submit a new claim or anything like that. It is whatever words they use is the same as you having not qualified for state unemployment.
So, Paul, if I may reiterate that, because
but then
Grace, if you just give me 1 second, Jess started talking real fast.
Yeah, because I know I had a number of friends who were 1099 who applied early on and, of course, were rejected, thinking that they were applying for the federal money as well. Although what we had learned is it had not come down through the system yet because they were still working on those processes. So if I'm understanding correctly, if I were one of those people who had applied beforehand, I don't need to apply necessarily. I don't need to reapply. Then I'll automatically be considered into the PUA.
Right. You do not need to reapply if you have already applied for state unemployment.
Great. That's. I think that's reassuring for a lot of people because right now I think a lot of us are doing a lot of paperwork, and the fact that they're able to streamline this is pretty incredible as much as they can.
Absolutely. I'm going to go over to Grace now, make sure that she has a chance to say what she needed to say there.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I don't know if Jessica mentioned this in what she just said, but I think it's also imperative to know one of the big things that we can do to help in the process is to make sure that our 2019 federal taxes are filed.
Good point.
As well as any documentation that we can gather. And I'm talking about the PUA qualifying people who don't qualify for state benefits, that we are doing everything we can to document it. And that if you know for sure you have income that you have the ability to document in some way, shape, or form, that it is showing up in some sort of financial documentation of some kind, bank records, etc., not only just cash, then you need to make sure you prepare all of that stuff, and you have the grounds to talk with or to appeal the PUA portion of your income. That was a very reassuring thing to hear from the commissioner.
And to piggyback on that, and you're absolutely right. And Jessyca, can you hear Grace?
Yes, I can.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Sorry, Jessyca.
No, but she did not hit on that, Grace. So yes, so a couple important things about this that we have learned throughout this process, and then I can't speak for him, but I think if you go back and roll the tape, this will be the obvious takeaway from what he said. Yes, for PUA benefits, which are that $600 a week. And to be clear, everyone gets up to $600 a week extra added onto your state unemployment benefits. It is just that if you are a 1099 worker, you normally could not get state unemployment benefits.
Right.
So instead, those people are going to get only the $600 or up to $600. It actually is taxable, and you can choose to have them just take the taxes out when they send it to you. So a lot of people get less; they get 500 and something. But the quickest way to make sure they can do that is to have filed your taxes for 2019. If you file for this year, that works too. But as the commissioner brought up, they keep pushing back, the date to apply for your tax, to file your taxes back into the summer, and therefore a lot of people haven't done it yet. So as long as you did it for last year, then you are good. You don't have to reapply. That being said, as it relates to underdocumented income, as Grace was pointing out, when that was brought up to the commissioner, he basically was like, yeah, I'm not going to spend any time sending this information over to the IRS. That's not a thing I'm going to do. So what we've kind of got going on right now, or at least what it seems like, and again, I'm not a legal expert. None of us here are legal or government bureaucracy experts, although I have worked in a couple of them, and then they do have similarities. We've kind of got a intentionally, compassionately designed crack to fall through here, where if you can go back and document it in some way, and you're not going to get sued by the person who paid you, if it's someone and they're willing to go and write that down, and you can show your bank deposit where they say, I paid them $600 at this time and this date, I signed that, they can testify that, and you've got, the next day I deposited, here's that exact amount, or here's the check that they did. That counts as documentation. And a lot of those kinds of things are going to go through and qualify as proof of income in terms of the PUA. And they're not going to waste time, per se, or manpower when they're this far behind, caring about the couple of people that probably need the help anyways, getting the help.
But I do want to also say that is absolutely true. In the current processing, he said what they're prioritizing is that they will prioritize administering the PUA benefits that you have coming, if that's the case. But that does not mean that you are not liable for whatever you are now reporting for the first time ever as like real income, taxable income to the IRS or whoever. So we're not saying defraud anyone. We're not saying that. We're saying if you have legitimate income, that you have some documentation, starting with financial institution, some sort of process or transaction, start there. Of course, yes. Whoever your employer was, whoever paid you, whatever bank account that came out of, you need to, or hosting organization that collected the cash or whatever, you need to be on good, whatever terms that they will acknowledge that
they paid you that money.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That's what we're talking about, is that if you're friends with someone who owns an establishment, or they hired you part-time for something, and they say, yeah, come in and, like I'm a sound person. If they're like, come in and fix our sound for the night, and we'll throw you some money. But it wasn't reported or anything like that, or something like that. if they're willing to actually acknowledge that they paid it to you and you did work for it and you can back that up, then that counts. And you don't need to make sure, you don't have to go get this, notarized and a signed affidavit and all of that. Just do the best you can. And as long as you are literally not lying, then I think people are going to be fairly compassionate, especially because the money for PUA is not coming from the state unemployment coffers. So there's no risk to them to be compassionate there.
Speaking of that, can we highlight one of the other huge and relevant takeaways, especially right now, which is what about those coffers? What about the unemployment insurance account for the state of Georgia, for their fund? And what about his assessment of the solvency of the PUA, where the PUA is coming from? And first of all, that was amazingly illuminating, where he under his administration has taken the Georgia fund. But I just wanted to highlight, there is no danger in his opinion, even though they're doing twice as much now in 1 month than they did in the whole of last year, in all of 2019. But he continues to assert that there's no chance of it running out for the Georgia unemployment benefits. Y'all all heard that, right? And
Right.
then on the federal side for the PUA, in his opinion, no, that is not a fund that is going to work out. I think that is a huge, encouraging bit of news to hear from his opinion, right?
Absolutely. Well, and it's important because we did see the Paycheck Protection Program and the small business loans run out rather quickly, and I know that probably did scare some people because after all, we're talking about free money, and you don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, and you don't want to be a cynic, but also you're reasonably intelligent. And you've probably dealt with money in government before, and you know that it pays to be a cynic. So I get that. But at least from the state unemployment level, I trust that answer pretty much 100%. It's kind of like the Hope Scholarship. They say the Hope Scholarship is always running out, but they still have $700 billion, in a reserve, which is not 700 billion, 700 million in a reserve. But, it's always solvent for many years forward. They're just worried about the future.
But it's very good. But it's very good not to have to speculate about it, to hear it from him and directly
Absolutely.
From his perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because I'm sure, as you said, a lot of us are just trying to conserve our mental, emotional, whatever energies and to apply for the thing that we know we're going to get with some certainty. I think that has made that very clear. And also,
there was one other takeaway.
Y'all can chime in. I didn't hear all the stuff he said about employer responsibilities, but I think that plays a big part in us making our personal decision of what to do when it comes to looking out for our safety.
Jessica wanted to chime in on that, Grace. She was about to, and you got there. You guys, great minds.
Sorry.
No, great minds, right? Real quick, though, I don't mean to pick on you, Paul, but the free money thing, it just sort of reminded me that this is money that we all pay taxes on. So, and I know as an employer, I pay unemployment tax as well. But it is good. I think what was reassuring about it is that when we were talking about the SBA money, this is separate. This is not the same pool of funds. So the lockbox illustration, I think, was very helpful. And I think the other highlight, and Grace was getting into this about really, the commissioner mentioned that we were still under a state of emergency. And I think that was really an important takeaway for me, especially for those of us who have friends and loved ones who are working in the service industry, as one of the first waves of workplaces to start opening up in a week. I think it was reassuring to hear that, businesses could either fade into opening up fully or have a conversation with your employer about your circumstances. Again, Paul, you mentioned you might have a multi-generational household. And I know that as soon as I get off this call, it's this forum, I'd like to talk to my daughter about that too, in terms of some of her options, because she's working as a server too. And so, I don't think the governor was saying everybody you have to open up right now, because I know that there are some businesses that are choosing to remain closed because they feel like it's in the best interest
Right.
of their customers and their staff. And it's reassuring that it doesn't mean that now unemployment ends for those staff members who are part of those restaurants.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing that he tied that to that I think is particularly important for us to remember is that all of the waived requirements, everything that has to do with during Corona, this is true, but it's not normally true, is tied, the legal mechanism it is tied to is the governor's state of emergency.
Right.
Which, if you have not been, I'm going to add Grace back in here fast. Grace, can you mute you? I need you to mute your laptop and your phone. But if you have, this is a game that politicians play, and I don't mean a game in a cynical way, even usually or always. But by keeping the state of emergency as the legal mechanism, then the governor is free to do a lot of other things that might make certain people in certain places happy, without actually ending something that would change the requirements on something like, say, unemployment.
Right.
Until Governor Kemp says we are no longer in a state of emergency, you now have on record from the Georgia Commissioner of Labor that everything that you would be required to do that has been waived is still good, is still kosher. Up until that time, that is true. Now, that does mean that we need to watch for when that state of emergency comes down, because we don't know when that will be.
Currently, it's April or May 15th. It's been extended to.
Right.
So as of right now, we have until May 15th, where those extra state requirements would be, have been waived. Whether or not,
assuming the employer doesn't require staff to come back, and that's another decision mechanism and conversation. I know I'm not required of my staff.
What I have seen from, I'm unmuting Grace now. So what I have seen from the PUA legislation, I read through the authorizing legislation for the PUA. And again, not an expert, just trying to do my best as someone who's been a part of the lawmaking process in a small way before, is until such time as that state of emergency ends, then you are not required you can still file for unemployment if you cannot or do not want to go to work for a corona-related reason. Now, it cannot just purely be, I don't want to go to work. But if you live with someone that you can't risk that with, or if you work in a position where catching it would be a real risk, something like that, those are reasons that fit under, corona unemployment. Now, your employer can still do whatever they want. You live in a right to work state, and I'm sorry, if you didn't know that, I'm sorry to be the person to say it. They can still fire you for whatever reason they want. That being said, the important thing, and the way that I think the Department of Labor is trying to help us all out, is as long as you make, which this is going to be more helpful for 1099 people than it is for film people, union people, or nonprofit professionals. But as long as you make up to $300 a week in your actual income when you go back to work, you can still claim unemployment. You will still be eligible for that $600 a week from PUA. And you can, if you get $55 from Georgia state unemployment, you are still eligible for that, plus your $600, or however much minus the taxes it comes to. So up to $300 a week, you can still claim during the state of emergency to not be working. Once the state of emergency is done, if it's not extended, then it's back to normal rules. At which point you are required to be actively looking for a job, which is it's not terribly difficult. You just got to be actively applying to, some places. And at that point also, if you work at all, a certain number of hours, then it will get rid of your unemployment benefits. Now, that might be why they have not instituted a national state of emergency, because then that might apply to the PUA stuff longer than the state stuff. That's speculation. But for now, know that until May 15th, them's the rules. We're
Little
going to keep
correction. It's
going from there.
apparently it's May 13th, actually.
May
The state of
13th.
yes.
Thank you for that. And also, I want to make sure, I know that the rest of us have talked a lot. I've certainly talked too much. But Glenn, would you give us kind of an overview of what you and Kaz have been doing for members
Yeah.
of your community, so people
Yeah,
know,
sure.
look for the helpers?
Yeah, sure. So I am in Local 479, film and television. We're a little different for the most part for most of our members because we're mostly W-2. There are some of us who are in the gig economy as well and are doing some 1099 work, but for the most part, we are W-2. Kaz, 927 doing stagehand work, she has much more 1099 situations than 479 does. So what we've both been doing on our respective groups is just trying to get solid information out there as often as we can and as correct as we possibly can. Neither of us can really necessarily pull the levers to get you your money, but what we can do is take you out of the darkness and shed some light on your situation, give you the information about the process that you're in, what you've done right, and when you can expect things to get resolved. And I mean, uncertainty is where anxiety comes from. I know it doesn't offer people like a ton of comfort if you're just trying to pay your rent and you really need money and you don't have it right now. What we can offer you is a timeline and information on how this whole process is working. I know it's not in your pocket yet. I feel for you, but it is coming, and you can understand why it's taking so long. Or if you have made an error on your end, we can get you the information and put you in touch with somebody to correct that error to get your situation resolved. That's basically our roles.
I want to jump in real fast because someone was, thank you so much. It doesn't show me your name right now, dear Facebook user, but there is a national state of emergency. It doesn't technically have an end right now. There's about 4 different ways that Trump declared a state of emergency dating from January to the middle of March. So I will do some digging and try and find which ones are referenced by the U.S. Department of Labor, if any, and what that relationship is. But in terms of state unemployment, we do know that is the time at which, May 13th is the time at which we know up until then requirements are waived.
Right. And just to emphasize the point that Mark made, y'all can make $299, right? Right up to that point.
A week,
right? And you can still qualify for that $600 then that you're getting from the federal government. You can still make that happen, so that there is an option for you to get through this, financially speaking.
Perfect. I wanted to pull up, someone put a kind of their case up, or a hypothetical up, that I think is important. And I don't know that we have a definitive answer, but I have a strong suspicion.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, so basically if someone makes $3,000 a year on a W-2, but $35,000 on 1099s, then they can only get the regular unemployment on the W-2. This will affect most of us. I think it's a really good situation to put out there. So here's the thing. Based on what the commissioner said when we brought up the mixed income, your employer can file a claim for you, or you can file a claim. If you are I'm not sure what the ethical considerations on this are, but if you file a claim for your 1099 stuff now, you will be showing that you make a lot more money than the $3,000, and you're going to get the $600 either way. So in my unprofessional opinion, not speaking on behalf or connected to anyone else or anything, I, Paul Glaze, would say that you should look into whether or not you can just have your employer file that W-2 claim on your behalf, and not worry about the 1099 stuff, because your Georgia state unemployment is going to be higher, based on that. Now, if they come back and they ask you for your 1099s, later on down the road, that's extra money. So that's a risk. I'm not sure how all of that works. I will try and find a better answer on that. But I would say that either way, you can get the 600. That is not that's not up for for debate or question. You'll get it either way. But if your W-2 employer had already filed for you prior to them opening it up to 1099s, and you haven't submitted a 1099 claim yet separately, you can't submit a separate claim, and that's probably better.
Right. There was one question, and maybe he answered it, and I was just busy answering an email or something, and I missed it. So, Paul, if you would, the scenario, I know you touched on it with him, but the scenario when, let's say, someone was working for a television show, it ended mid-March, let's just say March 14th, and they went ahead and filed their claim just a couple days later and got the process going on their own. Unbeknownst to them, they find out a week or two later that Netflix is doing the right thing by their employees, and they're going to pay them for 2 to 3 weeks. Right? They didn't know that they were going to get that money, but their claim is already in process. They are then unable to go in and report that income because their employers filed on their behalf. So some people are getting payments for weeks they were actually working, and I'm happy if you got your money, great, you got your money, that's good. But what I've been advising people to do until it gets sorted out, and it is getting sorted out,
I agree.
Chill, hang on to that money. Do not go out and buy a flat screen TV right now. Just hang on to that money because there may be a payback scenario for that. I mean, good on some of these companies stepping up for their employees and doing the right thing and paying them a couple weeks or more in some scenarios. They just didn't know that was going to happen in every instance, and they did the right thing for them and their family. You know, they got laid off. You got to get that unemployment claim going. You can't wait to see, well, let's see if my employer helps me. They just had to get it going. So
Right.
I know those situations are out there. I know it's being worked on. And if you're worried about it, just hang on to that. Or if you need that money right now, go ahead. It's okay. Just be prepared, like you were putting aside if you're a 1099 employee. Put a little aside for potentially paying that back or paying the taxes back on it. Everybody had good intentions with this. The employers, payroll, Georgia Department of Labor, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. There was a lot of just, people trying to fix the problem quickly and some cross wires happening. So those scenarios are out there. It's going to be, sounds like from what Mark said, a bit of a case-by-case basis, and he's doing his best, and everybody's doing their best to get back to all these people, but there are instances like that one that will require someone behind the scenes pulling a lever to correct those payments.
I agree.
And have them correct going forward.
And I would just say that, so there is an appeals process. We know that. Let me throw Grace back in here again. For the person who just asked, yes, the PUA date, the back date is April 4th. That was the first week you were eligible to claim it. And if you were unemployed during that time, then you are eligible to claim dates back to there. But that is not necessarily the, let me make sure so we can get, there we go. I am unclear at this exact moment, and I've got to do more digging because it's worded minutely differently a couple different places, whether you had to have already filed for unemployment at that point in time to claim those weeks, or if it's you get 4 months from the time you start declaring, as long as it was after April, like starting April 4th. So if you just now apply for unemployment and you start getting PUA, you may not get a backdated check starting from April 4th. It might start your 4 months now that you have claimed it. I don't know exactly how it's going to work yet. I think that what I just described is the way that's going to work, but I'm not 100% on that, so I've got to keep looking on that. To get back to something that Glenn mentioned real fast there, and you have a Facebook user confirming that. When you're talking about protecting yourself, you got to kind of think a little bit. You got to contextualize the crisis on the actual timeline, which is that there will be multiple waves of infection. They may be not as bad as the first one. They might be worse. You really don't know at this point in time. You hope that we're all gung-ho and ready to fix it when there's another small outbreak and that it doesn't spread, but you just don't know. Japan's dealing with their second wave right now. this could be a thing off and on until we get a vaccine. And that could be another 12 to 24 months. It will likely be on the shorter side, or likely be 12 to 18. But there will be economic disruption for a minute. So there is an appeals process on all Department of Labor decisions. They are absolutely backed up and inundated right now. There's no way they're going to get to it. So if they come back to you and they say, oh, actually you owe us such and such because we're running out of money, which they're not going to run out of money, but for whatever reason they give, you can appeal that, but understand that you're going to be in legal limbo at that moment for the foreseeable future until they get around, because you're probably going to be a fairly low priority. They'll still be processing appeals, back from, February and March for another month. And by the time we get down to those kind of decisions, it could be a minute. So if you are someone that you can reliably bank on a decent amount of employment remotely or whatever, then yeah, go ahead and if you need it, spend that. Survival first, 100%. They're not going to come after you with everything they got. That's probably really not going to happen. But 8 months to a year from now, if they come back and they say, hey, well, we were actually finally tidying up the books from that whole thing in March, April last year, we realized that we paid you too much. You owe me $500. It's a good idea to have that put away. And I would do exactly what Glenn said. And if you're 1099, you filed your taxes, you're used to this. Take that money you were going to put aside for your taxes anyways, add that to it, and worst case scenario, you get an extra refund, or you can spend some more of your paycheck later on if that turns out not to be the case. But right. Please do protect yourself.
100%.
Yeah.
I want to also go back to, let's see what we got here. For those of us, we did get an answer on when will the weekly searches be required again for work. Kelly Gambino did ask about is it retroactive until the 4th, or is it begin the date you file a claim? Our understanding is that if you were already claimed unemployment before April 4th, then it is backdated. But if not, then it is from where you actually get your claim through. Regardless, if you were eligible to receive it and should have received it starting on April 4th, you will get it. That much we know is true. See, we got some of the funds to pay for those claims. We pay for the federal government. That's a broader question that I don't think that we have any real basis to answer. Protecting yourself, just in general. If you were a W or are a W-2 employee, it is your employer's responsibility. You get one claim. Either your W-2 employer can submit it or you can submit it. The only way that you should submit your claim is if A, your employer isn't going to do it, in which case, then yeah, submit your claim because you need money in the meantime. Even if it's not the right thing from your employer's side, it's going to take them too long to penalize them or scare them to doing it. Or 2, you're a 1099 or gig worker, and you're technically therefore self-employed and your own boss. If you're a contractor like that, then you need to submit your own claim. Otherwise, it is your employer's job to submit a claim for you. It is their job to keep you updated on it. It is their job to file it weekly. Your benefits every week have to be claimed. And if they're not claimed for that week, you will not get them. So what we're saying here is you are absolutely legally, now whether you can get this back or not, that's a different question. But you are legally entitled to all of the benefits that you were supposed to get if your employer processed your claim dating back to that time, to such time as you were not able to work when that claim got processed. So if it's 3 or 4 weeks and they've only did the first one and they didn't do it, they owe you 3 weeks of claiming of those benefits. They owe that to you. And the Department of Labor is happy to come down and play the good cop because, like with all of those money people, it's like IRS people, like when they get a chance to be the actual hero in a story for once, they love to take it. They would love to come down there and call your employer and say, no, you have to do this. But when or if you can get a hold of them to get around to that, that's a whole separate thing. And we'll see we can see that maybe if there's a way we can put all of those groups and cases together and submit them at once or something, if that's easier for them to process. We'll keep trying to see what we can do. But that is their job, and if your boss is not doing that, you should tell them that they are legally obligated. And I'm going to send it over to Jessyca because she will be able to speak to this more than I can, because I'm not a boss.
Well, I was just going to say that it behooves your employer to do this. I mean, again, we pay unemployment insurance for our employees, and this this package keeps us from having to be liable for certain funds. So, I think, I got a email from the Department of Labor that outlined my responsibilities. We're fortunately in a place where we have not had to furlough or lay off any staff members. But if I did, I mean, it would behoove me as an employer to do this on behalf of my employees from a financial perspective. So hopefully, employers out there will realize this. I know, again, for watching my daughter who works in the service industry, her employer did it right away for everybody. And the process was not that grueling. So I think hopefully I try to err on the side of people doing the right thing, but we know that's not always the case.
We do. And we have hit a couple of times, but there was a couple specific questions about this early on, which is, on the same mixed income route. Like, this Facebook user says, "Hi, thank you for doing this. I'm an independent contractor, scenic artist, a number of theaters around Atlanta. That's how I make the majority of my money. Luckily, you can't see it all, but their survival job, their W-2 submitted for them, is there a way they can file for their other freelance work?" And the answer to that question is no, there is not. But that is what the extra $600 was theoretically designed for. So you get, if it's not clear, because I know there's a lot of acronyms that fly around, there's a lot of programs that authorize this and that, $600 added to your state benefits to everyone. When they say PUA, that's just for people that don't qualify for state unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
So for your 1099 work, you would not be able to submit a claim normally. And should you be able to? I mean, yeah, I agree, you should be able to, but that's not what the reality is. And that PUA money is $600 a week for you. There is another, like FPUC, FEUC, something like that, acronym that is added to your normal state unemployment. And there's a limit to it. You can't make more than a certain amount, and there's things to it. So I don't want to say definitively that you're going to get $755 because you get $155 through your state unemployment. There's other factors, but yes, there will be additional money from a sum of $600 a week added to your normal unemployment. And that was their way of not trying to get in. They were trying to paper over all of these specific complex situations by making that a blanket thing. That was their intent. Whether it's successful or not, that money is starting to be processed in 2 days, I believe. Some people may already have started getting it. Unfortunately, just by the nature of dropping a 5-year project, by normal government speeds onto someone's department in a 2-month period, they're trying to do everything as quickly as they can. But when some people are going to get it starting right away, and there's not going to be a hard and fast rule about who got it first, because different teams of people are working on different things, or different batches of people.
Right.
Now we have a Facebook comment here that says, my union has a flow chart. It says apply for unemployment. When you run out, apply for PUA if you still have to. And that is a strategy that I don't think anyone on this call can endorse or not. What your union is suggesting is that they're probably not going to check too hard. And if you run out of your first benefits and then can submit a separate claim, maybe that will just go straight through to the PUA, and then you can get that money. But I am doubtful that will be the case. I think they're just going to add that $600 a week onto your regular unemployment. We did not get enough clarity, and I apologize about this, on the extension of benefits. That was the next question that I wanted to ask.
Mm-hmm.
was how that extension of unemployment benefits hits each of these different programs. I will try and get that information. Like we said, he's been remarkably eager to answer questions on Twitter and online otherwise, so we'll try and get that for you. Your union, if you're IATSE or if you're Actors Equity, or I can't remember what the AMA, whatever the musicians union is, depending on who your union is, they have a legal rep who is in talks. And if they're saying to do that, then I'm saying you should lean on their expertise, because they've probably been a part, or at least tangential to, an active lobbying effort on your behalf. And they probably know something that we don't know. So I'm not saying don't listen to your union rep. I would trust them before I would trust myself. But that being said, do not also be surprised when what happens is Mark Butler sends you an email that says you have duplicate claims and it's slowed down our processing time. So we need you to clarify such, and such. And remember, that's going to put you to the back of the line of a couple 100,000 people. Maybe not the back of the line, but there's definitely tens of thousands of people going ahead of you anytime there's an error like that. So trust your union rep 100%, but be prepared that could also be a possibility.
Hey, Paul, dovetailing off what you were just talking about, there was another question where someone asked, what about people who have exhausted their current claim? Let's say you had an unemployment claim going prior to all this mess going down, right? And you drained down your benefits. Do you still qualify? You're going to be out of state benefits. There's nothing to be done there, but you still get that 600. That's not coming from the state. So if your claim was already going, just continue, stay the course, a little patience. You will get that 600. It is coming. And if you're, let's say you had already had a claim before, your benefits were drained down, you got a little job for a little bit, you've made a new claim, but your benefits are still almost zero because you've exhausted them, still file the claim. You still get that 600. And if you elect to have taxes taken out, that's 504. Or you can, if you're in a scenario where you need that money right now, no problem. Pay the taxes later. Just, like you've been saying, protect yourself. Put that money aside like you always do for 1099, because it's going to come due eventually.
Right. And that's a good point. So yeah, that is a scenario in which I feel confident saying yes, reapply. Yes. Is if you have exhausted your benefits already, you should not technically have to reapply.
No.
That should not happen. If you're in a place where you can wait another week or two before reapplying, just to see if they catch up and you start getting it, then I would do that. But if not, then go ahead and reapply, because at the end of the day, if you've done your taxes, you're still going to get that $600 a week, and that's money, and you need it.
Yeah, for sure. So in the scenario that, like, let's say you were unemployed up until the end of December, and at that point your account was drained. You had exhausted all your funds. And let's say you were fortunate enough to get a job at the end of January, and you worked sporadically throughout February up until this kind of mess went down. So at that point, your claim ended, and you've got to start a new claim. And you're worried about starting this new claim because your funds are gone. You could start the claim. You might see a little bit from the state because your employer contributed a little bit, maybe not much, but you're still going to get that $600.
That's very helpful.
Would anybody mind if I just take a quick soapbox moment and sort of
yeah, do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm really grateful to the unions that are out there. And I know we are a right to work state, but we do have unions that exist in Georgia. And I'm grateful for what they're doing on the lobbying side.
Here.
That the gig economy workers are taken care of. And I want to give a special thanks to Americans for the Arts, because I'll tell you, these are things that we've been looking at for years. And we were scheduled to go to DC again this year and had to cancel that particular visit because of the coronavirus. But a couple of years before that, we were there talking to legislators about the CREATE Act, which would have made provisions for this sort of crisis scenario for the self-employed and 1099 workers, entrepreneurs, and those of us who are freelance. And so, this is really, if I forgive me for taking the moment, but I do want to say that this is why we collectively, need to come together once we get through this crisis and really look at how people are paid, look at how the system is set up to protect us. Because as Paul mentioned, the gig economy is only growing, and we have a lot of people that entered the workforce right after the last recession. A lot of millennials, that was the first time entering the workforce, were unable to find jobs and became freelance workers. And here we are again with freelance workers with no health insurance, no savings, and no job protection. And I think, I don't want to speak on behalf of the other panelists here, but I can say that for my organization, these are things that are behind the scenes that we have been fighting for and fighting against, policies that can inadvertently affect our workers. And I think that there's a lot of lip service that is given by all politicians about small businesses, but I think that we need to take some of those policies to task when this is all done. But in the meantime, please send a virtual hug to all the people who are out there lobbying on your behalf, because there's a lot of people that made this happen. And I could say 10 years ago, we probably wouldn't even be thinking about the gig economy at all.
That's 100% accurate. I know IATSE sent tens of thousands of letters to the House and Senate members and various representatives of everybody's state. I know I sent several letters. There was a pre-format that you could send. It was very easy. I added my own little blurb at the top to make it very personal. But you better believe it that has an effect.
It does, yeah.
And if we're not organized like we are, like you were saying, 10 years ago, maybe not. I mean, is there ever a good time for a worldwide pandemic that shuts the economies down? No. But we're in a better position today to handle that. And hopefully going forward, like you're saying, this changes things for the better. There's got to be some silver linings come out of this. I mean, sometimes you have to go through it in order to fix it. Like, you got to take your shoes off when you get on a plane now. Nobody would have thought of that prior to 9/11. Nobody. Right. But we don't want people to hijack planes anymore. We would also like gig workers to have health insurance and to have protections for their jobs. That'd be great. So I think this was a teachable moment. I think there's going to be momentum behind it. And I hope that workers because like you said, people depend on this for their income. This is no longer people selling necklaces twice a week at their local farmers market and their gig economy. No, they're making 30,000 plus a year via Lyft, Uber, whatever. And we have to treat them differently. It has to be different going forward. It cannot go back to, COVID's gone and let's just go back to how things were. It doesn't work anymore.
And speaking from the political side, and then I'll shut up because I know, Grace, you've been patiently waiting to get back in this. Speaking from the political side, you do have leverage. So Jessyca, if there is like a ATL Arts Day at the Capitol, if there's a lobby day that maybe a lot of people don't know of, please put that out through C4, and I'll recruit people to go join you for that kind of stuff. But understand, these politicians get a lot of leverage and a lot of feel good from the film industry being here and from cultural initiatives in their areas. They get that. That's something that's their bread and butter. And that gives you some power. Don't think that does not give you the ability to demand something that you need. Whether we get it or not, that's a larger strategy. That's a whole thing. But if we can't even get people together to demand it, then we're definitely not going to get it.
And the entertainment industry is huge here, and don't take it for granted that we live in a red state. As much as we live in the bubble of Atlanta and we think we're democratic, it's not. Get outside the perimeter and it's different. And we have a thriving entertainment industry prior to all this going down in a conservative state. We have incentives in place put in by conservative governors, conservative legislators that is as rock solid as an incentive package can be for a state. They do want these workers here. We do have, like you were saying, power and leverage, and it's about how you leverage that. But we're definitely not powerless going forward, for sure.
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm excited about and what I've been seeing is that, and Grace, I know we've had these conversations about the sort of silos that exist between, fine arts and commercial art and entertainment. And I think what we're seeing is that a lot of that division, those lines are blurred right now. And there's so much crossover. And there's so much, I think, support on both sides. There's support between the industry that I work in with freelance artists and the restaurant industry. There's people I know who are designing sets for theater, but also working on a film crew. And so I think we kind of need to get over this commercial art versus fine art versus high art versus entertainment, and really come together. And I think that's where we're going to find the most strength in those numbers, because we all exist because of one another. There's, the film industry is a great anchor. The music industry is a great anchor, but we have a great thriving nonprofit arts scene too, that is also providing talent and a training ground for a lot of these other industries. And those industries are providing income for people to go and do those other gigs that are maybe not as lucrative. And so this is a really fantastic opportunity. I'm glad to be connected to Glenn and Paul. Grace, we've been connected for a while now, but I'm also talking to other people within the film and entertainment industry, within the music industry, and coming together on these kinds of initiatives. And so if there's a silver lining, it's that, not to be hokey, but we all are in this together. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that.
That is so true, Jessyca. And I'm so grateful for C4 as well as your leadership. The advocacy that y'all do is so incredibly important. And I really, really appreciate that. And also, practically speaking, the resources that y'all give in terms of education about how to build your business, that's hugely important. And I just want to say something about that. We've already talked about these, the things that Kaz and Glenn are doing in terms of educating ourselves specifically about the unemployment benefits, but there are so many other self-employment type of topics that we really can educate ourselves about, and then build up that capacity to have access to other kinds of things, other kinds of funding, capital, and have the confidence, of course, to pursue what it is that we want to be doing, projects as well as careers and income and all that. But also, I think we need to, this whole collaborative way of doing these, we need to be able to help each other, sharing that information, teaching each other, sharing skills. Business building is so very important. And to know that you are receiving the benefits that you can, but then someone who could easily be doing the same is not just because of a lack of information or a lack of having the opportunity to try. We just can't let ourselves continue to be that way. We have to take advantage of as many of the rights that we have available to us now in order to build our solidarity to pursue these more together. So, I mean, it's not just about you being individually healthier as for your own income and your own business, but it is also to make sure that that you and everyone like yourself will be strengthened, as the union has done for so many of these industries. Let's do that. I really appreciate what you said about those things too.
I think that's a really good note for us to end on, unless there are any further questions in the comment section that happen here in the next couple seconds. I do want to go ahead and throw something out there that we did not touch on, and that I have yet to find anyone with real authority to comment on. And that is in the case of if you are an undocumented artist or an undocumented 1099 worker. According to the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute or Initiative, I can never remember what the I stands for. if you are DACA or DAPA, if you have work authorization, then or TPS, you do qualify for Georgia unemployment. I am not sure how that's going to apply on federal levels. And obviously, you have a lot of other concerns that I probably can't really imagine when you consider these kinds of decisions. But I will say that I know that 40 to 50% of all undocumented workers do file their taxes already. And if you do that already, and you do have work authorization, please do apply for unemployment. And if you already file your taxes and there's no information that you're giving to the IRS, if there's no new information to add to that makes you uncomfortable, I would go ahead and apply anyways, even if you aren't DACA or DAPA, because I don't think they've got the bandwidth or the desire to be tracking people down. You've already got that information in the system if you file your taxes, so the IRS could do that if they wanted to. And they might just say, yeah, cool, here's $600, you're a worker. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I've not been able to get definitive answers on that. But GPBI does say that DACA, DAPA, TPS do qualify for Georgia unemployment. And if you qualify for the PUA authorization, the CARES Act puts the onus on the states to decide who is qualified or not. And so if that's the case, and the federal government's just going to take whoever Mark Butler sends up, then you might as well go ahead and try if you're not risking anything. Because that might be help you need. So I just want to make sure that got said. I want to thank everybody for participating in this. I apologize for our technical problem. Wasn't anticipating having to ask those all myself, but I appreciate you sticking with me. And we will, Kaz over, is another IATSE member, has been making how-to videos, and she shares them often into the Atlanta Artist Relief Fund group. So please be on the lookout for those. They answer a lot of basic questions about technical glitches and things. She's really, she and Glenn both have been really great about trying to get some of that Unemployment 101 information out there. We will try and do the same. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll probably start trying to collect names that we can advocate on our behalves too. Because we'll have a brief window of time between this and the next wave of infection that we might be able to get some groundwork laid. And there's nothing like actual need for everybody to be in the bipartisan spirit. So we'll see what can happen. Please be on the lookout. Reach out to us if you have unanswered questions or comment on this video, and we will definitely try and go through those over the next week or so and get you any help we can get you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Good job.
Bye.
Yes. Bye.